Hey Wargamers, Mike here from Epic Duck Studios, and welcome to the Epic Hobby. Today I'm going to be sculpting a hardwood floor base out of green stuff. I'll be doing this on a normal 30mm beveled base, common to War Machine or Malifaux, but if you wanted to do this for a flat top base like a GW style, the process is the same, you just spend a little more time tidying up the edges. I'm going to begin by just mixing equal parts of yellow and blue to make the green stuff. I like to sort of pre-measure out by making a small ball, but I almost always find that even when I try to underestimate, I still make way more green stuff than I need. Once you've mixed the green stuff for about 2 minutes, you want to just take a small ball of it and start to press it into or onto the top of the base. And you'll want to just dip your thumb in a little bit of water so the green stuff doesn't stick to it. This is common basically whenever you're sculpting with green stuff. It's just a little bit of water applied to your sculpting tools or your fingers will keep things from sticking together. And here I'm just sort of slowly working around the edge of it so that it smooths and transitions to the edge of the base nicely. Now the really cool thing about hardwood floor bases is you really don't need any fancy sculpting tools at all. I'm going to be using here just a wooden clay shaper, but you really don't even need to use this. Even a simple toothpick would work just fine. I'm purposely using this tool because it's almost the width of the base, so it helps me make nice straight lines just to mark out my different planks of the hardwood floor. Next I'm going to be using a smaller sculpting tool to mark the ends of each of the planks of wood. Pretty much any sculpting tool you can get will work fine for this. The common Citadel sculpting tool works really well. Or if you want to use this particular one, you can go to micromark.com and search for pick, carver, and spatula set. I'm going to be using this particular tool for almost the majority of the sculpting at this point. So here I've just about got the basic shapes of the planks laid out. It's important to think about what kind of base you're making here. If you're going for more of an old rustic look, you might want the planks to be uneven widths, whereas if you want something a little more modern, they should be very uniform. So now I'm going to start carving the wood grain in. I'm going to do this by basically doing straight lines running the length of the planks of wood, but just rotating the base slightly as I go so the planks have a little wave to them. And then just making sure that each successive line kind of follows the same wave, or when it starts to deviate, that I fill the pattern in with a little bit of a knot or an additional line. The key here is basically patience. If you rush this, you're going to end up with your lines crisscrossing. It's going to look a little bit weird. If you just take a little bit of time and just really focus on your, not your brush work, but your sculpting tool work, and just keeping the lines relatively parallel, you'll get a really good result. Honestly, it's not that hard to sell wood grain, and especially on a base where it's not the key feature of the miniature. So here you can see I'm bringing the first two lines together almost in an elongated triangle. They don't quite meet, but I'm leaving a large gap between them. And what I'm doing then is filling that in with almost a small triangle shape to give the impression that there's been a knot or a branch there originally in the wood. So here I go making that small sort of triangular area I mentioned earlier. And with that out of the way, I just need to fill in the rest of the detail outside of that area. Being able to lightly rotate the base in your fingers while you're dragging a straight line makes making these curved lines so much easier than if you were to try and actually trace each curve individually. So here again I'm going to bring two lines together in a bit of a triangle pattern to give the impression that there's a knot in the wood. Now I'm going to start doing some cleanup work using a color shaper firm chisel tip. If you do any amount of green stuff work at all, you owe it to yourself to buy a set of color shapers. These are effectively silicone tipped paint brushes, and they're absolutely fantastic for green stuff work because they're just a little bit pliant. Being a silicone tip, they give just a little, and so they help you do really nice, smooth surfaces, very smooth transitions, and help you carve without the sharpness that comes with using a metal tool or a knife. Now, I didn't want to use this to actually draw the wood grain because it's a little bit too subtle. You do want the wood grains to be fairly sharp and deep so that when you apply a wash to this base, eventually it just settles right into them. Whereas if I'd done it with the color shaper, they'd be a little bit softer. And I mean, there's definitely times when you want that effect, but not particularly for wood grain. I'm using it here now though to soften the edges of each plank of wood so they look a little bit more worn, because I want this to really look like it's a really old bar floor that's just been around for ages. Lots of people have kind of trodden on it and it's just kind of starting to wear down. That's the impression I kind of want out of this, and so I want my wood to look more worn, less crisp. So on the topic of making my wood look more worn, what I'm going to do here is just chip up the edges of each of the different pieces of wood by basically just exaggerating a little bit of some wear in the grain of the wood. So I'm just opening it up where it sort of hits the edge of the wood plank a little bit, just sort of spreading out the grain a little so it kind of looks like it's actually starting to kind of chip away. And really the whole point of this is to make this wood floor look like it's really, really old. Like the wood is actually starting to wear down. And again, if you want a more modern or a newer kind of hardwood floor look, you just wouldn't do this part. So finally, I'm just going to take the color shaper and work around the edge of the base, just pushing a little bit of the green stuff back into the middle where it kind of spilled out onto the edge of the bezel. This most commonly happened when I was dragging a long linear detail out onto the edge of the base and just a little bit of green stuff followed the sculpting tool. So I'm just working my way around the base, just pushing it back in with the color shaper very lightly and applying a little bit of downward pressure so it kind of folds back into the side of each piece of wood. And honestly, that's really all there is to it. Hardwood floor bases are one of the easiest projects to kind of get your feet wet with custom basing. If you're new to sculpting with green stuff, it's a great project to learn on. And really, once you get the hang of it, you can knock these out in a couple minutes a piece. So if you need a lot of them, it's really not that daunting a task. Thanks again for watching The Epic Hobby, and until next time, do something epic.